Okay, so what if you could just redraw the map of an entire country? It sounds wild, right? Well, today we're diving into a pretty radical proposal from our source material, a vision to completely remake South Korea. We're talking about scrapping a 30-year-old system and building a new generation of what you could call mega cities?
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get a handle on the current system, the one that's been around for about 30 years, and understand why the speaker in our source thinks it's just not working anymore. Then, we'll get to the really big idea, these mega metropolitan cities. We'll look at what that means for Seoul, the capital, and how this vision would literally redraw the map of Korea. And finally, we'll touch on the super bold way they think this whole thing could actually become a reality.
Okay, so to really get what this whole proposal is about, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to look at a huge moment in South Korea's modern history, which put the current system in place, a system that's been running the show for over 30 years now.
Yeah, so the source material points out that 2026 is a big anniversary. It'll be 31 years of what's called local autonomy in South Korea. And that's exactly what it sounds like, right? It's a system that pushed power away from the central government and gave cities and regions the ability to manage their own affairs. It's been the status quo for a generation.
Now, it's really important to get this straight. The speaker we're looking at isn't saying this system was a total bust. Not at all. In fact, they argue it did exactly what it was supposed to do for those 3 decades. You know, it built the roads, it set up basic services, it gave local communities a real voice. It basically laid the groundwork for all the growth we've seen.
But, and this is the big but, that very success leads to a massive question, and it's the one the speaker keeps coming back to. Is the system we built for the last 30 years the right one for the next 30? Or, to put it another way, did all that success actually create a whole new set of problems we're facing now? And you guessed it, that question leads us right into the speaker's diagnosis of what's going on today. And their take is pretty blunt. The system has hit a dead end.
So here's the core of the problem, according to them. All those lines on the map, the ones that separate different provinces and cities, well, they used to be a source of local pride and strength, but now they've turned into walls. Instead of cooperating, these regions are just competing against each other, fighting for scraps and wasting a ton of energy and resources in the process. And wow, the speaker really doesn't pull any punches here. They use some seriously strong language to get their point across. They basically say that mayors and politicians are acting like they're the bosses, when in reality, they're just employees. The citizens are the owners. The term they use, hired thugs, is super provocative, but it's meant to hammer home one simple idea. Politicians are there to serve the people, not the other way around.
Okay, so if the diagnosis is that the system's broken, what's the cure? Well, this is where we get to the heart of the vision. It's a huge, game-changing idea that would literally reshape the entire country.
The proposal is to just call it a day on local autonomy, end that chapter, and start a new one, an era of fusion. And they mean that literally. We're talking about erasing old provincial lines from the map, merging entire regions with their biggest cities, and creating these enormous, powerful new things called mega metropolitan cities.
So why go through all that trouble? What's the point? Well, the big idea here is that these new megacities wouldn't just be busy with local stuff. No, they'd be so big and so powerful that they could actually play on the global stage. They could pool all their resources, all their talent, and start dealing directly with other countries.
Okay, a plan this huge, this ambitious, it has to have a starting point, right? A first domino to fall. And in this vision, that first absolutely critical piece of the puzzle is the capital itself, Seoul.
This is a really interesting point the speaker makes. We all think of Seoul as the capital of the nation, right? But they argue that on paper, in the administrative sense, it's really just a special local city. It's got its own government, its own police, sure, but legally, it's kind of in the same box as other cities. And the big problem with that is its physical size is seen as way, way too small for the giant role it actually plays. So, what's the solution? It's laid out as a pretty clear 3-step recipe. Step 1, you take the city of Seoul and you merge it with the entire Gyeonggi province that surrounds it. Boom. Step 2, all those cities that are now inside this new massive area, think places like Yongin or Hwasong, they stop being cities and become districts, kind of like boroughs. And step 3, you give this new enormous entity an official new name, Capital Seoul.
But here's the thing. This whole plan for Seoul, it's not just about Seoul. It's the blueprint. It's the model for redrawing the whole darn map of South Korea.
And this is where you really see the scale of this thing. They're applying the same logic all over the country. You'd see Gyeongsangbuk province and the city of Daegu fuse together to become Daegu megacity. The whole southeastern corner becomes Busan megacity. The Chungcheong provinces get bundled up into Daejeon megacity. You get the picture. In every single case, the old provincial lines just disappear. They get absorbed into these new, bigger power centers.
So the billion-dollar question is, how on earth do you make something this massive actually happen? Well, the speaker's plan for this is, let's just say it's very direct and probably pretty controversial.
The plan to get this done is shockingly simple. The speaker proposes that in 2026, the president should just make a proclamation. Just stand up and declare that this is the new reality. Their argument is that a bold move like that from the very top would basically force the change to happen. It would set everything in motion without getting bogged down for years trying to pass a bunch of complicated laws.
And all of this leads to the ultimate endgame, creating a totally new way for Korea to interact with the world. In this future, you'd have these new megacities striking deals with entire nations. You'd have their internal districts making partnerships with smaller countries. And right at the top of it all, this new capital, Seoul, wouldn't just lead Korea. It would, in their view, take on a leadership role for all of humanity.
So, when you boil it all down, this isn't just a plan about redrawing some lines on a map to make things run better. No, it's framed as something much, much bigger. It's presented as a pathway for South Korea to step into a new global destiny. And it leaves us with this one final, really provocative idea from the speaker, that if they do this, the remade Seoul won't just be Korea's capital, it'll become the capital of humanity. And that really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What does it even mean for a nation to dream on that kind of scale?